You already saw the thumbnail. We're all here for the same reason. Let's talk about it. Charlie Kirk was the subject of a successful political assassination yesterday at a college campus on the first stop of his American comeback tour. But let's familiarize ourselves first. Who the hell is Charlie Kirk? Surely he's just some quirked up white boy. Charlie Kirk got his start back in the post-Gamergate 2015 YouTube days when Donald Trump was first running for president. He already had his youth political outreach organization, Turning Point USA, up and running, and he was, to use modern terms, clip farming for those engagement points to get more peeps into Turning Point. This is the same thing that Ben Shapiro pioneered originally. He would go to college campuses, get some blue-haired liberal hot and bothered by being an asshole to them, and then call them emotional, so by default he wins, I guess? It's a competition? Ben Shapiro's specialty was finding college students who had not even finished their undergraduate degree yet, so he can make fun of them to their face under the guise of debate. The shit he would say would be things like, in 2021, at an event at Florida State University, Shapiro stated that systemic racism no longer exists in the United States, and that personal prejudice is an ugly part of human nature, present in every society. Long, convoluted way of saying racism doesn't exist, but if it does, it's individual and not systemic, and we can't do anything about it, but also it's fine, you're a big baby, fuck you. Now, this is intentionally an example for more recent years because, well, the conservative policies and framework in the United States have gotten so crazy in recent years. In 2017, Trump was holding gay flags, and now his Supreme Court might ban gay people from existing. Now, in 2025, genuinely, the rhetoric is deadass so far gone, like beyond hope, just irredeemably, explicitly racist. I will be including some Charlie Kirk clips with full context so dumbasses understand that I say this all with genuine intent. I have no desire or need to deceive. Let people talk long enough, and they will tell you everything you need to know.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
I will feel obligated to break down every clip because I'm well aware that media literacy is dead. In this video, Charlie Kirk names a few black congresswomen, says they're only there because of DEI, and of course they're there because of DEI because black women don't have the brain power to make decisions for themselves. So of course we need DEI to help these blacks out, is basically what Charlie Kirk was saying in that clip. This is not me trying to misconstrue anything. I provided the whole clip. We can, if that isn't what he said, I would love for it to be reinterpreted, but he's pretty explicit about his policies in a way that only a white man can be. Just look at what he says about George Floyd.
I saw a clip somewhere that you were trying to get the officer who murdered George Floyd pardoned, and I just want to know what your reasoning was about that.
Well, George Floyd didn't die because of the police officer. He died largely because of a drug overdose.
I have to genuinely go through and fact check this whole statement. This is crazy shit. This is ridiculous that we have to rehash all of this still. Let's break this down. First of all, drug overdose was not the cause of death for George Floyd. The reason people like Charlie have been saying this is because the autopsy conducted at the time that did not determine cause of death pointed out that he had fentanyl and meth in his system. From the perspective of the police officers, that must be the cause, right? Ultimately, the court agreed with expert testimony from Dr. Martin Tobin that drugs could not have been the cause of death, not even in the form of slowing down Floyd's breathing. If a lethal amount of fent was in Floyd, it would have killed anybody, even a healthy person standing upright. That was the conclusion that Dr. Martin Tobin touted. Forensic toxicologist Daniel Ischenjman, whose laboratory tested Mr. Floyd's blood and urine samples following his death, said there was evidence that some of the fentanyl had metabolized, meaning, in nerd science words, bro, there's no way he could have overdosed. That shit was already long gone in his system. He was coming down, like he was cool. Oh. Kentucky police surgeon Dr. Bill Smock, an expert in forensic emergency medicine, was also called in as a witness. Dr. Smock said Mr. Floyd displayed air hunger, a term for when the body becomes desperate for oxygen. While a fentanyl overdose can slow down breathing, he said, people who are overdosing are not aware that they're lacking oxygen and often just appear sleepy. In contrast, he said Mr. Floyd was very alert. Back to Mr. Tobin's medical opinion, he followed up and added that Mr. Floyd had already shown signs of brain injury about 4 minutes before Derek Chauvin took his knee off of his neck, and that a healthy person who was put through this would have died too. A healthy person that had somebody on their neck for that long would have died too, is the conclusion of Dr. Martin Tobin. About 3 minutes before Chauvin removed his knee, Dr. Tobin said there was not an ounce of oxygen left in his body. The knee remains on the neck for another 3 minutes and 27 seconds after he takes his last breath. Dr. Tobin said, after the officers have found themselves that there's no pulse, the knee remains on his neck for another 2 minutes and 44 seconds. This is all shit from 2021, dude. There is no reason to be peddling a medically disproven conspiracy theory unless you don't give a fuck about that black guy anyways. Good riddance.
But he had his knee on his neck. And we all saw the video.
But the knee on the neck is actually an approved police technique that police departments taught Derek Chauvin to use. Do you know that George Floyd was saying, "I couldn't breathe," well before that restraining technique?
What the fuck? Oh my god. Bro is trying to tell us all of this shit is normal. Kneeling on someone's neck is not normal. Dr. Baker, the doctor who is the foundation, the catalyst of Charlie's racist conspiracy theory, because he released the autopsy that did not show any cause of death at the time, that doctor, he said that neck compressions was a unique form of restraint that he's never seen before, ever. He also testified that Floyd said, "I can't breathe" during a struggle in a police vehicle before he was restrained. Dr. Baker was asked if it was possible that George Floyd was having trouble breathing because he was experiencing a cardiac event. He has a heart condition. Baker said it was possible, but he can't say for sure. This is the same guy. This is the whole catalyst of his conspiracy theory around George Floyd deserving to die, essentially. Fuck that guy, right? Is basically what Charlie Kirk is saying. All of that stems around this singular medical examiner who also says, dude, I've never seen anybody like kneel on somebody's neck and kill them type shit. What the fuck?
And
so why'd they use the technique if he already couldn't breathe?
Well, because he was actually resisting arrest, and they had to restrain him, and they restrained him in a way that they were taught to do, which is the knee on the neck technique.
We're not even 30 seconds into this video. Jesus Christ. No, George Floyd was not resisting arrest. And if he was, you cannot fucking kill him. What the fuck?
Okay, so when does the like technique end? Like when they die? Like he said he couldn't.
No, I mean the technique ends when the individual stops resisting arrest. His cause of death was not asphyxiation; it was drug overdose. He had
that was a part of it. Like he also had a heart like thing, and like he was on drugs. But like he wouldn't have just died if he was standing there. Like they had his.
Well,
their
actually,
knee on his
there's an
neck.
argument to be made. According to the medical examiner, he was drug overdosing in real time. That it wasn't because of the police officer Derek Chauvin that put his knee on the neck.
At 59 seconds in, he just straight-faced lies about Floyd actively overdosing and how the medical examiner agreed. None of that is true. The medical examiner says the opposite. Lying is so overpowered, bro. They need to nerf this shit. I honestly can't finish this clip because he goes on to say that Floyd, from its very inception as a police call, like the guy who, the gas station attendant who reported Floyd, was never oriented around race. When we know for a fact, the person who placed that call reported a black guy with a counterfeit 20. Those police killed him, and we will never even know if he even knew he had a fake 20 on him. I probably wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. Damn. Fuck, okay. We're not done with this piece of shit. Next clip.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been
that
in the
affected
last 80 years.
the generational psyche of an entire group of people?
No, I'm sure it did. I'm not discounting that.
I don't think I need to explain this shit because he really does just outright say blacks were better under slavery. But you know what? He's crazier than this.
So she takes off the Miss Rachel costume and the uniform, etc. And she comes back and she's like, now I'm just talking as Rachel. And she goes, the reason I'm this way is because I'm Christian. And in the Bible, it says, love your neighbor. And really, I approach people in love. And if you're not doing that, I guess you're not really following the Bible. She didn't say that part, you're not following the Bible, but that was kind of the underlying piece there. So Charlie,
128.
What's going on with that?
Well, let's let her say it. 120, I'll respond, and then I got a dash.
I've shared prayers on here before and said, God bless. And that's because my faith is really important to me. And it's also one reason why I love every neighbor. In Matthew 22, a religious teacher asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus says to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. There's no greater commandments than these. I believe it's mentioned 8 times, love your neighbor. So yes, everyone belongs, everyone's welcome, everyone is treated with empathy and respect. It doesn't say love every neighbor except. There are so many reasons I stand strong in love. I stand with everyone. That's who I am. And the love back and the God bless if you disagree is genuine.
Andrew?
I would just, to Jack's point, I'm dying to know, like, what do you think when Miss Rachel quotes scripture in that way?
I mean, Satan's quoted scripture plenty.
It doesn't just say love your neighbor, though. It does say love your neighbor except, in a sense.
As yourself, but hold on. She's not totally wrong when she says, first of all, the first part is Deuteronomy 6:3-5. The second part is Leviticus 19. So you love God. So you must love his law. How do you love somebody?
Here we go, folks.
You love them by telling them the truth, not by confirming or affirming their sin. And it says, by the way, Miss Rachel, you might want to crack open that Bible of yours. In a lesser referenced part of the same part of Scripture is in Leviticus 18, is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Just saying. So, Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters.
He said this to Miss Rachel, y'all. The teacher, the PBS Kids replacement on TikTok. Dude, what the fuck? Charlie Kirk is not a political influencer or a commentator. He was a hate speech aficionado, and he was not murdered for his politics. He was murdered for his hate speech. Amazing TikTok by DAHMMY HILLFIGURE, who expands on this in a more eloquent and respectful way than I would feel obligated to offer.
The issue with people split on the Charlie Kirk situation is simply a knowledge gap. The amount of people running with getting got over political beliefs is never okay, they're first and foremost correct. But if you're saying that in reference to Charlie Kirk, you're putting him in the same box as people who actually died for their political beliefs. People like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Nat Turner. I would have thought of some white names, but that doesn't really happen to y'all outside of like JFK. But JFK and Harvey Milk. But those men died for their beliefs. Charlie Kirk died for his hate speech. This man is on record claiming that rape statistics are based on lies from women. That is hate speech. He is quoted saying that he is okay with more gun violence, schools or otherwise, as long as he gets to keep his guns. Y'all are asking me, what about his kids? He didn't care about yours. He gets gotten to school after saying all that, and now it's time to have a heart. A political belief is that taxes should go to schools. F who dies, as long as I can stay strapped, is hate speech. You're asking me to have empathy for a human quoted saying. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term. It does a lot of damage. That is also hate speech. That is someone that values guns more than you, your school-age child, or any woman you care about, or their human life. Mind you, if you actually see the video, he gets asked about mass shootings in the past 10 years. Charlie immediately deflects to ask the guest if he means gang violence or just regular mass shootings. Not only did he care about guns more than you, he was actively throwing Black, Latino, really any American group affected by the gang member stereotype under the bus with his last breath. And so this is also hate speech. But the amount of Black people, people of color, bending over backwards online to defend a man like that is crazy. Seeing a good portion of y'all do that with the Bible is also insane, because that man is in hell. If you're more upset about the reaction to how he left this earth in comparison to how the way he lived life on this earth led to those consequences, you either don't know who that man was, and I give you a pass, Or you have the privilege to be in a group that feels unaffected, so you don't care. But you don't like seeing all the hard language online because you don't feel like your life is that hard. I hope y'all defend that man to your last breath. Because moving like he did, it might not speed up the trip, but it is gonna get you a one-way ticket down there with him. And I'm sure he's looking up at all of us right now, thanking you very specifically for your support.
At least he died doing what he loved. Not just being racist, but also actively pushing forward the permission structure to encourage state and decentralized violence against marginalized communities. Okay, so let me not beat a dead horse more than it already has been. Why do I talk about this? I used to watch Charlie Kirk in high school. I was on the debate team and quickly found myself becoming what is colloquially referred to as a debate pervert. In South Park, they called it a master debater because of what it sounds like. I was a nerdy little loser who was a, well, actually, kind of guy. I watched Shapiro melting snowflakes, Crowder's prove me wrong shit, and Charlie Kirk was hard to believe, I know, but he was meant to be the more normal one and white one of the trifecta. It was a easy to appeal to demographic because it was a faux intellectualism argument. And as somebody who was in the middle of debate and wanting to learn and be able to have that kind of rhetoric experience, it's the only shit out there. The Democrats don't even do shit like this for themselves. And these guys are doing it for a profit. Anyways, Shapiro was too nerdy and annoying and doesn't fit any of the masculine standards he tries to perpetuate. And Crowder was a divorced wannabe incel who abused his wife at the time. So all that makes sense. Charlie was able to rise significantly above those other two nerds and garner the largest youth conservative movement of people who think the same white supremacist shit he does. I knew a couple of those Turning Point kids at A&M. They were the type who this dude did argue with our female professor about how the gender wage gap doesn't exist. Well, actually, how would you know about it, Professor? You know, I was watching a video last night, and, well, they were saying that there might be a couple of other reasons why the gender pay gap might be there, and really it's because women choose jobs that are less money-making. So you should, as a professor, find a different job, bitch. Jacob, if you see this, I hope you found some empathy for real.
It's all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually.
How did I get out of that ideological far-right pipeline when I did in Houston, Texas? Honestly, it was a gradual process of educating myself and deadass touching grass. Half of these racists have never talked to a black person before. There are like 12 black people total in Utah. The rest are Mormons and punks. Yes, it's mutually exclusive because Mormons didn't let black people pray till the 80s, and the punks thing is me being silly because of Salt Lake City Punk and how there aren't any black characters in it. There was one inciting incident that I to this day credit for improving my ability to empathize with others. I got bullied. Now, I've been bullied before, especially on the basis of race. I'm looking at you, Western Academy, Jimmy Broussard, Pablo. But this was something ideological, and realistically, one might call it the consequences of my own actions. Boy Scouts started allowing girls. I was raised socially conservative in Texas and was in scouting with my dad, and of course, I was just learning what I picked up from my dad, but I deadass could not rationalize why women would even want to join Scouts. To me, they genuinely wouldn't like it, and they would just be putting themselves in harm's way of getting potentially abused.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
This is serious. Can you believe that? Wow, insanely fucked mindset. Do you just hate women? Yes, I did. I did just hate women. There is no other explanation for such an insanely stupid, misogynistic, and almost rape apologist adjacent framework. And that's because I had younger sisters who could join Scouts. Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk dead ass made me start to hate women. Specifically the women that exist in my imagination. Keep in mind, I went to an all-boy high school and middle school. Oh, that makes sense. I'm sure the male-dominated environment, aggravated by inclination to adopt those fucked frameworks. This shit happens to co-ed schools more than private schools, though. That's an assumption, but one that makes sense to me because there are hella more private schools than public schools. Wait, reverse that. The day that Scouts of America announced this decision, the high school debate group chat mentioned it. And I interjected with my fucked framework and genuine confusion. For the rest of the week, just the week, but for that week, those boys asked me why I was so misogynistic and sexist, and they deadass bullied me for real. And that shit was not only deserved, but it worked. It wasn't mean-spirited, it wasn't with the intent of making me depressed, it was with the intent of steering me in the right direction and giving me some grief. That shit genuinely helped me in my ability to shake those ideologies as I had more IRL experiences. Never underestimate the importance of touching grass. Yeah, let's move on already. Rest in piss, I celebrated yesterday, Hitler dead, all of that. Time for the important shit now that we have finally covered the background. That was just the background. There are two things I want to talk about today. First is the idea of political polarization and where we are today. And second is the title of the video, what happens now that some racist Nazi loser is dead? First, political polarization. We typically hear this term in the broadest, most generic form of conversation, my professor included. I'm going to send him this video, so hopefully he gives me some cool refining framework details later if he sees this. There are a couple of, again, generic theorems that kind of explain why things are polarized, but let's define that first. What is political polarization? To put it simply, it's the growing ideological divide between political groups. Basically noticing that they're getting farther apart and subsequently crazier? The median voter theorem does a pretty good job about explaining the logic from a party perspective about why that might be the case. And it acknowledges that political chasing the center makes parties look alike. Which kind of sounds contradictory to the whole polarization thing to begin with. But what do you mean? I hate them Democrats. They are nothing alike. Kamala Harris ran on building the wall herself. That was it, actually. That and the most lethal fighting force in the world was deadass her only policies. She mentioned affordable housing once and never mentioned that shit again. She mentioned tax cuts for small businesses, which high-key didn't mean shit for me. Like, at least Trump would say shit like, it's a rough world right now, and it's the fault of the Mexicans. Don't worry, I'll fix it for you. Like, that at least connects with the people in the sense that, wow, he's recognizing that shit is rough right now. It's not the fault of Mexicans, but he at least acknowledges the struggle that's occurring. Kamala couldn't even inspire economic hope. Effectively, all she did was what she was calling Hitlerian in 2016. Democrats and Republicans are quite literally the exact same party because they're both reliant on the same corporate benefactors. They're not looking after you and me. They're looking after getting reelected by helping corporations. The only difference is Democrats don't want to kill all gay people, I guess? Maybe throw a gay flag on a bomb going to Gaza. But you know what? Trump already did that! When he was highlighting the women who led the mission to bomb Iran. I disagree with the idea that things are getting increasingly polarized politically. I think that is only the case for people with consistent worldviews and morals. For both the Democrats and Republicans, we went from John McCain being like, no man, Barack Hussein Obama is no Arab, he is a good American. To Trump implementing a Muslim ban back in 2017. Democrats went to at least pretending they gave a crap about undeserved constituents, and now we have Gavin Newsom doing a photo op while destroying the tent a homeless person lives in. Where's he gonna go, bro? Not back in this tent, that's for damn sure. It's broken now. Homeless people should all die. Political polarization is not happening. Both parties are trending towards extremely right-wing policies, while normal Americans are left feeling unrepresented. I'd like to point out that I was part of the anti-genocide rally against Kamala and Beyonce's joint rally in Houston in the middle of Brat Summer.
Hey Kamala, we're no fools! Hey Kamala! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
And I sold all of my values as a person who cares about kids getting torn to shreds by shrapnel, and I voted for her dumbass, knowing she never had a chance. And the results proved it. Historic low voter turnout for any candidate, let alone a Democratic candidate. Why would anyone vote for Republican light when they have Republican at home? Fuck you, Kamala, and your book, and Biden. While our political parties and representatives do not reflect the growing polarization in the country, cultural figures like Charlie Kirk do. After the aftermath of something far more important to the national consciousness, Sydney Sweeney's Nazi-coded white supremacy, I have good genes, get it, teehee, advertisement, and with her attendance at the wedding and seemingly close relationship with Jeff Bezos and his new wife, it's clear that wealthy elites have caught on to what I am hinting at. The most effective way to create this perceived polarization is through the media we consume. All art is political, especially when it doesn't realize it. And then it's just a reflection of the author's unconscious politics. This video by Celibritea Blinds encapsulates it very well, even if it's just from a drama perspective.
What is going on with Sydney Sweeney and Jeff Bezos? He is allegedly financing her entire career and pushing PR dollars out to help her reputation. This comes after blind items that allege that they had dinner one-on-one after she attended his wedding to Lauren Sanchez, and a lot of people were wondering why she was even there. But Jeff and Sydney definitely have a closer relationship than we all thought. A shell company of the wealthy bookseller has been pumping PR dollars like crazy into building up the brand of the illiterate actress. And again, this allegedly Sydney Sweeney and Jeff Bezos. And the related blind item from July 11th reads, as I told you the other day, many of the invitees to the wedding of the emperor were there because of business. That was confirmed today by one of the attendees who announced a massive investment from the company of the emperor to the illiterate actress. And on July 16th, the illiterate actress and the wealthy bookseller had a one-on-one dinner. And the related headline reads, Sydney Sweeney reportedly launching lingerie line with the help of Jeff Bezos.
Polarization is not reflected in our political parties or representations, who seemingly on a national scale don't give a fuck about their constituents. It is represented in corporate attempts at casual normalizations and framework changes around white supremacy. Okay, time for my favorite topic, topic number 2, what happens now? Kind of an all-encompassing question that, if you've seen my video on Washington, D.C., you might understand. The last time someone close to Trump was hurt, it was in Washington, D.C. One of Musk's teenaged employees, who doesn't have to give out his name, so he goes by effectively a username that the government expects others to refer to him by. His name is Big Balls. Big Balls was beat up by a 15-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl. In response, the Trump admin deployed the National Guard and gave them permission to operate with stop and frisk policing. This was all talked about in my previous video on DC. But I'm going to take a few steps extra to explain why this is bad and wrong, because I should never assume media literacy or critical thinking or that those missing steps will be filled in. Having the military do policing is illegal under our Constitution. It was one of the reasons we had the Revolutionary War against Britain, because they had their redcoats policing and citizens were supposed to let them sleep in their homes. Nobody was alive back then, so we don't really have a frame of reference of how that really looks like. Knowing my target audience is Americans, and we can only understand politics with media we have consumed, it's time for a Star Wars connection. So stormtroopers are the military, and they are on your planet policing you. And they weren't there yesterday, and they all have blasters. And they fucking hate you. They don't want to be there. That's just a job to them. $50,000 signing bonus. Now things are making sense. Now remember, this is the National Guard. That is the tubby weekend warriors who just wanted a communications degree. They didn't sign up to climb a flight of stairs, let alone police a city which they are not trained on how to do. Let's remember that Trump has already made calls to expand his military occupation to every crime-riddled Democrat city in the country. Keep in mind that DC has had a huge low crime stat. And Chicago, who Trump was this close to invading, have had the lowest crime rate in 30 years. All he needs is an excuse. And for DC, Big Balls was his excuse. A few of y'all might see where this is going. What is stopping Trump from sending the National Guard to Utah? From reference, I'm writing this at 9/11 at 3 in the afternoon, in case Trump does some shit tonight. Realistically, there is no reason not to do so, given his intent is Star Wars Empire, stormtroopers on every planet type shit. Some liberals would hesitate under the current recognition that Utah has a Republican trifecta. They would hesitate with that idea. Trump wouldn't do that. They have Republican governor, state house, and state senate. All of those Republican. That's correct. But what are two traits associated with every city? Period. City in general. Two things. Every city has a shit ton of people in it. And what do people do when there's a lot of them? They vote Democrat. I would be surprised to find a city with a population over 500K that has a Republican mayor. Like, be for real. It's only like a cultural, like, family thing where they just have to vote Republican every time type of deal. Most people with a brain who don't view politics in a team sports lens and aren't rich recognize that at least Democrats are supposed to have their best interest at heart. Whereas Republicans are like, fuck everybody who's brown. Trump could totally and honestly, and has no reason not to send the National Guard into Utah. And that will in turn open the door up to him sending the National Guard to other Republican states. Specifically, ones that have a sanctuary city like Houston, Texas. Obviously, this terrifies me. More so for the National Guard, because I don't know anyone in the Texas Department of Safety or the Houston Police Department who wouldn't assume a malicious stance against the federal government. This is Texas, y'all. Let's be for real. Let's remember this state's history real quick. Just remember Waco. Like, you don't even got to remember anything smart or half interesting. Texans be doing that shit for no reason. But at the same time, the Lutheran accelerationist in me recognizes that it has to get worse in order for there to be a more active resistance against authoritarianism. I want to share some history I learned today in my Intro to Latin American Politics class. It's a class that goes over the history of Latin and South America in terms of its colonization, revolutions, independence, and subsequent struggle to finally have a democracy, which lasted until about the 80s. And we're going over the different non-democratic regime types that were represented in that era, and one struck out to me in particular. The personalist dictatorship. Personalist dictatorship tends to be a regime where control over policy, leadership selection, and the security apparatus is in the hands of an individual dictator. The military glazes this personalist dictator, who is more often than not a military guy, who rises to power. Typical strongman energy leads to a purge of officers that aren't loyal, top-down leadership, and the armed forces do not play an institutional role in the system outside of supporting the dictatorship. All of this minus the delivery guy origins perfectly describes Trump's leadership style. If we can relate that in 2015 capital and wealth is more valuable than being a military guy, he is quite literally the exact archetype come to life. The IRL example we were reviewing was Nicaragua in the 30s and 70s, through the 70s, who were ruled by three people from the same family, the three Somozas, all brothers. Revolution and violence is the only way to end that regime type, which sucks. And typically at the end of a revolution, including against a personalist dictatorship, the army just goes back to the barracks and their life goes back to normal. The military is even inclined to outright give up power for self-preservation and loyalty purposes in instances of a military or an indirect military dictatorship. But personalist dictatorships usually have to flee the country to survive. Sometimes the best thing for the armed forces is to take a step back and give up power. A personalist does not have that opportunity, let alone do they think that way. What are they supposed to do? Go back to this was the example my professor used. Is the third Somoza just going to go back to his hacienda and retire? They're burning that shit to the ground and fuck you for what you did to us for the last 70 years, 50, whatever, right? 50 years. This is why personalist dictatorships tend to be short-lived. That was the other key detail about this kind of regime type. They last the shortest compared to every other kind of non-democratic governance type in the single-digit years variety. So hopefully that bears well. Wanted to give everybody some hope. Zoran Mamdani. Hope y'all checked out the YouTube, check out the Twitch, Sage Walk on both. Woo! Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Rest in piss!
Wow, he literally hopped on Fortnite while you closed the app.
I did. I'm already there waiting.
Okay, I got
Elite Zaddy?
on my other.
Yes, ma'am.